The grand astral Colosseum hovered in silent majesty above a swirling nebula, its colossal arches formed of materials older than recorded time, shimmering in blues and greens as cosmic dust drifted around it. In the vacuum of space, no sound could carry, yet in this place, encased by an invisible energy field that provided air and gravity, the roars of countless species now echoed like distant thunder. From within the protective dome, one could see millions of stars shining far away, indifferent witnesses to what was about to unfold. The stands were filled with an impossible gathering of life forms, serpentine beings coiled in levitating thrones, amphibious bipeds in shimmering robes, gaseous life forms compressed into kinetic bubbles. All had come to witness the final stage of the Tournament of Ascension, where combatants wielded powers beyond mortal comprehension, forging alliances and rivalries beneath the watchful eyes of ancient alien gods. Kaida stood at the edge of a broad stone platform, breathing heavily, her heart pounding. She had come so far, farther than she had ever dreamed when she first set out from her ravaged homeworld. She still remembered the open cargo bays of her small exploration vessel, the anxious faces of her people waiting inside, desperately hoping that somewhere in the infinite cosmos lay a new home. Humanity's cradle, Earth, had been reduced to ash and memory by wars and ecological collapse. Their last hope was Kaida and her small band of explorers, who had drifted across star systems in search of a fresh start. But fate had intervened. Her team stumbled upon a mysterious alien network of colossal temples drifting in a dead star system. Within one temple, Kaida found a luminous artifact that bonded with her, a crystalline gauntlet brimming with cosmic energies. The artifact awakened something dormant, a pantheon of ancient alien gods long sealed away. These entities, colossal and ineffable, had demanded tribute, and soon Kaida found herself conscripted into this tournament. She'd fought tooth and nail through round after round of duels against champions of distant galaxies. Now she stood among the final contenders, her cosmic gauntlet pulsing with astral fire. She ran her fingers over the artifact, feeling it hum. The gauntlet allowed her to channel starlight, solar winds, and the gravitational tides of black holes in ways that still astonished her. She had come to rely on it, but it had also changed her. Before, she believed that strength could be found only in compassion and understanding. Now, after seeing what the gods demanded, senseless violence, twisted tests of worthiness, she was no longer so certain. Could peace ever come through strife? Across the platform, 3 other finalists stood, each separated by pillars etched with strange runes that hovered mid-air, rotating slowly and casting shifting patterns of light. The first was Arion of the Luxurii, a humanoid of silvered skin and glowing blue eyes. He wore ceremonial armor of living crystal. Long ago, his race had been renowned telepaths who guided other species toward enlightenment. But the cosmic wars of centuries past had driven them into hiding, and he entered the tournament seeking a means to restore their honor. Arion, initially aloof and proud, had learned to respect Kaida's resilience over the course of their battles. He once believed that true strength lay only in refined intellect and telepathic prowess, but after witnessing Kaida's courage and empathy, he began to doubt that stance. Still, he clung to his pride, uncertain how to reconcile these new feelings. Next was Suthira, a slender warrior priest from an obscure world whose people worshipped the ancient alien gods as divine saviors. She wore robes woven from stardust and metal plates carved from meteorite ore. At the start, she had believed wholeheartedly in the gods' benevolence. She saw the tournament as a sacred rite, a way to prove her worth and earn her people's salvation. But as she advanced, watching the gods demand brutal contests with smug detachment, she began to doubt her faith. The gods were not merciful patrons. They seemed cruel, detached, hungry for entertainment. Now, her faith was shaken, and she stood with a trembling resolve, wondering whether she had misread the will of her gods or if they had never been what she imagined. Lastly, towering over the others, was Thrask, a hulking behemoth with 4 arms and dark, chitinous skin, hailing from the Vrakshan Empire. His people reveled in might and conquest, believing only in strength. He had entered the tournament not for a noble cause but for personal glory. Thrask's initial belief was that all problems could be solved by crushing them beneath his heel. Yet, as he faced challengers who fought not just with muscle but with conviction, sacrifice, and cunning, he began to sense that brute force might not be enough. A seed of doubt had been planted in him, though he refused to admit it openly. They were the final 4. On the periphery of the arena, 12 colossal statues gazed down, representations of the alien gods. Or so everyone thought. In truth, those statues were more than stone. They were vessels, avatars through which the gods channeled their will. The runes glowing in the air were part of an old mechanism that now hummed with awakened power. A horn-like resonance vibrated through the Colosseum. Gravity seemed to warp as a single giant figure appeared in the center, the arbiter of the gods, a construct of bronze and starlight with a face hidden behind a mirrored mask. Its voice boomed, "Final contenders, step forward. The challenge resumes." Kaida clenched her gauntlet-clad hand. She stepped forward slowly, as did the others. The Arbiter's form crackled with energy. "Only one of you may ascend," it declared. "Show us your resolve." The crowd erupted into cheering and chanting. Kaida took a deep breath. If she won, would her people be granted what they needed, a new world, safe and nurturing? That's what was promised. But promises from these entities felt hollow now. Still, she had to try. Arion brushed a lock of shimmering hair from his eyes and widened his stance. Suthira touched the charms on her neck, whispering a plea to whatever remnants of faith she had left. Thrask slammed his fists together, producing a shockwave of dark red energy that scorched the platform's surface. The Arbiter raised its hands. "Begin." Instantly, 4 combatants leapt into action. Kaida shouted, "Cosmic Rift Barrage." And her gauntlet flared. Specks of star matter coalesced into jagged shards of astral crystal that she launched at her opponents. Arion countered with a mental wave, Mindstorm Cascade. Shimmering telepathic blades formed from pure thought slashed through the air, slicing Kaida's crystalline shards into harmless dust. Suthira spun gracefully and unleashed Meteor Lancer. A spear of compressed meteorite ore that ignited into a fiery comet, hurtling toward Thrask. The giant roared, crushing Void Hammer. And brought his lower arms together, generating a gravitational pulse that slammed into the comet, bending its path and shattering it mid-flight. The arena's surface began to shift. Ancient runes crawled like living insects, altering terrain. Pillars rose and fell, platforms hovered overhead. The 4 combatants leapt from stone ledge to stone ledge, each trying to gain the upper hand. Kaida propelled herself upward using a pulse of cosmic wind from her gauntlet. Up in mid-air, she spun and gathered energy. She remembered her old crew, their hopeful faces. She had to give them something, some victory. She focused her mind, forging a delicate gravitational lens that concentrated starfire into a single, scorching beam. "Starfall incandescence," she cried, unleashing a brilliant beam at Arion. Arion, sensing the incoming danger telepathically, folded his arms and created a shield of refracted psychic energy, Celestial Mirror Shield. The beam struck the psychic barrier and split into dozens of smaller beams, scattering in a dazzling display. Some beams glanced off Suthira's meteorite armor, others seared the edges of Thrask's chitin. The crowd roared in appreciation. As the battle raged, each fighter remembered why they were here. Arion recalled his once peaceful home, the luxurious gardens where philosophers debated in gentle voices. After centuries of decline, he believed that by winning, he could convince the gods to restore his people's glory. But now he saw Kaida's dedication to something simpler, a new home, safety for her people. Perhaps honor was not about restoring old pride, but ensuring a future for all. Suthira's faith was crumbling. The gods were silent watchers, delighting in carnage. She parried Thrask's hammer blow, he had shaped gravitational force into a weapon again, and retorted with Heaven's shard. The tip of her staff glowed, unleashing a sliver of star metal energy that carved deep into Thrask's side. He howled, staggering, but then grinned. Pain meant nothing if he could achieve victory. Yet as Thrask looked at Kaida and Arion, he wondered, why did they fight with such conviction? It wasn't mere ego. They defended something more precious than personal glory. Kaida dropped to a lower platform, breathing hard. She was growing stronger in each exchange, learning more about how to use her artifact's energies. She glimpsed a fracture in one of the arena's monolithic statues. Something was stirring within it. She could feel the presence of the gods behind these trials, an intelligence circling like vultures. She had once believed that if she tried hard enough, she could prove humanity's worth to these powers. Now, after so much struggle, after seeing them pit countless champions against one another, she sensed they craved only spectacle. Perhaps the gods were no better than tyrants. In a flash, Thrask lunged at Arion, swinging all 4 arms in a blur. "Galactic Breaker," he shouted, summoning a vortex of compressed cosmic matter that struck like 1,000 fists. Arion cried out, "Thought stream reversal," and twisted space with his mind, slowing the vortex just enough to slip aside, though he was clipped by the edge and went tumbling. Suthira tried to take advantage, leaping at Arion with divine comet rush. Her staff flared, and she darted forward like a falling star. Arion caught her weapon bare-handed, psychic sparks dancing around his knuckles. "I admire your tenacity," he hissed. He could see her doubt, sense her confusion. Her faith was cracked and raw. "But are we not mere pawns to them?" he asked, pressing her weapon aside. The question rattled her. She hesitated, and that gave Kaida room to intervene. Solar Flare Blossom. Kaida invoked, sending a surge of radiance that erupted between Arion and Suthira, forcing them apart. She landed, facing them both. "We're being toyed with," she said, voice strained. "Don't you feel it? These gods will not grant us mercy. We must find our own path." Thrask, looming behind them, barked a harsh laugh. "Find your own path? Strength decides all. And I will be the strongest." He slammed his palms to the ground. The arena shook, splitting open to reveal molten cores of raw cosmic energy trapped beneath. A plume of superheated gas erupted, forcing everyone to scatter. Yet as Thrask tapped into more fury, he saw that Kaida's words made the other two hesitate. They were starting to question the entire premise of this fight. Perhaps they would unite, and if they did, he might be outmatched. The thought disturbed him. For all his brute force, he sensed that raw might not be enough this time. Something was changing within him too. He remembered his homeworld's arenas. Only the victor had meaning. But what if the gods cared nothing for the victor, only the violence? The Arbiter watched silently, arms folded. The statues around the arena began to hum, eyes lighting up. The final test was nearing. The gods were awakening fully, ready to crown a champion or devour them all. Kaida had an idea, a desperate one. She had learned throughout this tournament that sometimes alliances formed on the battlefield could achieve the impossible. If they continued to fight each other, none would survive the final judgment. She steadied her breath and shouted, "This tournament is a lie. I can feel the gods rising. They won't fulfill their promises. They only want to feed off our conflict. Let's break their cycle." Arion hovered a few feet above the ground, psychic energy suspending him. His eyes narrowed as he glanced at the colossal statues. The runes swirling around them spelled out ancient words he could partly decipher. "They are siphoning our battle energies," he said quietly. "Turning our struggle into fuel. If they awaken fully, what becomes of us? Obliteration, perhaps." Suthira's eyes grew wide. She had been taught that the gods were her world's guardians. But seeing their statues drink in this violence, the energy swirling into those stony eyes, drove a spike of betrayal into her heart. "No," she whispered. "They cannot be so cruel." Yet reality was right before her. Tears welled up, but then the tears vanished into resolve. If her gods were monsters, she would not serve them blindly. She'd forge a new path for her people. One that did not rely on divine mercy. "If what you say is true," she called to Kaida and Arion, "then we must stop them." Thrask felt cornered. If they all turned their attention to the gods, who would be the strongest? But even he could sense that there would be no future if the gods awaken hungry. He spat in frustration. "We shall see who stands at the end. But I will not be a puppet." He grunted and nodded reluctantly. A silent understanding passed between them all. The four finalists, instead of continuing their duel to the death, now turned toward the statues. The crowd gasped in confusion. This was unprecedented. Champions never turned on the gods' avatars. But these four had come to see the truth. The Arbiter's hollow voice boomed, "What is this? Continue the battle." Its mirrored mask cracked slightly, revealing a glowing eye beneath. Kaida stepped forward, sparks of cosmic energy dancing around her gauntlet. "No," she said firmly. "We won't dance to your tune any longer." She channeled starlight into her palm, creating a sphere of luminous plasma. "Supernova Lotus," she cried, hurling the sphere at the nearest statue. Arion combined telepathic energy with astral resonance, forging a spear of pure mind force. "Cerebral Lance of Dawn," he shouted, launching it alongside Kaida's attack. Suthira summoned a vortex of meteors, Heaven's Tearfall. And Thrask unleashed a roar that shaped gravity into a crushing singularity, Planetbreaker Maw. Four tremendous energies converged on the colossal statue. The crowd screamed, some fleeing, others paralyzed with awe. The statue cracked, pieces flying off into the stands. From the rubble emerged something colossal, a serpentine form coalescing from star stuff and obsidian metal. It was one of the gods, partially awakened. Its voice was like molten planets colliding. "You dare?" The other statues trembled, each beginning to move. One took a step forward, its stone foot now flesh and metal. Another spread wings made of nebula gas and lightning. The gods were awakening, furious, amused, hungry. Kaida felt terror grip her heart, but also resolve. She remembered the promise she had made to herself, to her crew. She would not bow. She would fight for a future where her people could thrive without fear. And this, perhaps, was what the gods never expected, that their pawns would unite against them. Arion hovered near Kaida. "I see now," he said, voice calmer than before, "honor is not inherited from the past. It's forged here, by doing what's right, even when it defies tradition. Suthira stood to Kaida's other side, gripping her staff tight. I worshipped you, she said to the looming deity, voice trembling but determined. I believed in your grace. I was wrong. My people deserve leaders who will guide them, not use them as sport. I will return to them with the truth. Even if it means they must suffer the pain of disillusionment. Thrask cracked his neck, positioning himself like a defensive wall. I sought only power for myself, he admitted, but what is the point of winning if there's nothing left? If even the gods are hollow? I'll tear them down and find my own meaning. And so the 4 champions, each changed by their trials, stood shoulder to shoulder against the gods. Lightning and cosmic winds erupted from the deities. One god swung a staff that distorted reality, another spat beams of dark matter. The air was ablaze with energies that no mortal should withstand. Kaida raised her gauntlet high, celestial aegis. She formed a protective shield of compressed starlight. Arion reinforced it with a telepathic barrier, shield of the sapphire mind. Suthira anchored them to the ground with gravitational runes from her staff, cosmic pillars of faith. And Thrask roared, channeling raw force, aegis of the Titan's roar. Their combined defenses struggled but held. The gods snarled in ancient tongues. The Arbiter screeched and dove forward, wielding a blade of collapsing galaxies. Kaida countered by channeling the energy of a quasar dragon's breath. A torrent of swirling cosmic flame erupted from her gauntlet, colliding with the Arbiter's blade in a symphony of sparks. Arion projected illusions, mirage constellation, creating decoys of the 4 champions to confuse the gods. Suthira hammered at a deity's flank with meteor strikes, and Thrask wrestled a tentacled arm larger than a battleship, using gravitational fields to twist and rip it apart. In that swirling melee, time seemed to slow. Kaida saw the pain and fear in her allies' eyes, but also the determination. They were rewriting their destinies here. Breaking the cycle of violence for violence's sake. The crowd, once cheering for blood, fell silent, unsure what to root for. Some began to hope that maybe these mortals could free them from the gods' manipulations. Each champion pushed beyond their previous limits. Kaida tapped into the artifact's deepest reserves. She had learned that the artifact channeled cosmic energy, but now she understood it could also harmonize their powers. She reached out telepathically to Arion, nodded at Suthira, signaled Thrask. They formed a circle, each placing a hand, or in Thrask's case, a massive clawed appendage, upon the next. Combine our energies, Kaida whispered. We must strike in unity. Arion focused his mind, he wove their auras together, forging a psychic tapestry. Suthira infused her faith, not in gods, but in their newfound alliance and purpose, strengthening the tapestry. Thrask poured in raw, untamed strength. Kaida guided it all through her cosmic gauntlet, channeling starlight, thought, faith, and might into a single attack. They rose into the air, surrounded by swirling galaxies of power. The gods roared, sensing danger. They lashed out with gravity wells, time distortions, solar flares. But the champions held firm, pushing through. Final harmony of the cosmos, Kaida cried. The words rang out, resonating in the void. Their combined energy shot forth in a blinding beam that tore through the Arbiter, shattering its mirrored mask and blasting it into shards of faintly glowing debris. The beam continued, striking the gods behind the statues. Each deity held in outrage and pain as the beam disrupted their essence. The arena shook violently. Statues exploded, raining down chunks of stone. One by one, the gods' manifestations flickered. Some vanished, others receded into dormant statues, too damaged to fully awaken. When the dust cleared, the champions found themselves standing on a cracked platform, the runes dimmed, the cosmic energies quieter. The Arbiter lay broken. The remaining gods had withdrawn for now, their awakening thwarted. The crowd stared in a stunned hush. Many realized the gods were not invincible. Perhaps they'd been slaves to these beings all along. Kaida's legs nearly gave out. Arion caught her elbow and steadied her. Suthira leaned on her staff, breathing heavily. Thrask knelt, wincing from wounds and fatigue. They had done the impossible, together. The Arbiter, fragments of its form still flickering, whispered, "You defy them. You break the cycle. This is not the end." It disappeared in a cascade of sparks, leaving only a lingering echo that rattled in their minds. The gods would remember this day. Kaida looked at the others. "We stopped them," she said, voice trembling with relief. But she knew it was only a reprieve. Those ancient gods were beyond fully defeating in a single clash. They would return. And they would not be merciful. Suthira nodded, tears on her cheeks. I must return home and show my people the truth. We must find our own destiny. No more praying to false saviors. Arion ran a hand through his shimmering hair. I set out to restore the honor of my people. Now I see that honor isn't granted by higher powers or won in gladiatorial combat. It's earned by protecting life and standing against tyranny. I will find a way to guide my people forward with this new understanding. Thrask rose, rolling his massive shoulders. Strength without purpose is hollow. I will find a purpose worthy of my might. Perhaps I will protect something rather than just destroy it. Kaida looked to the distant stars. They were still stranded out here in the cosmos, searching for a new home for humanity. The deal had been that if she won, the gods would guide them to a paradise. Now that promise lay in ruins. But maybe the four champions could help each other. I don't know where humanity's future lies now, she admitted. But I know we can't rely on gods. We must carve our own path among the stars. Will you help me? The others exchanged glances. They were supposed to be enemies. But now, having faced down the gods themselves, something like camaraderie had formed. Arion smiled softly. We have all changed, Kaida. I will aid you. My telepathy can help locate resource-rich systems. Suthyra gripped Kaida's hand. My people's ships are few, but we know how to navigate the hidden currents of hyperspace. We can help you find a safe haven. Thrask snorted. I'm not much good at soft tasks, but if any threat appears, I will crush it. Consider my claws at your disposal. Kaida's heart swelled with gratitude. This was not the ending she'd imagined. She had set out thinking that by submitting to the gods' will, she could save her people. Instead, she had learned that reliance on cruel masters was a dead end. True salvation would come from forging alliances and shaping fate through their own strength and wisdom. Around them, pieces of the Colosseum began to crumble. The crowd, uncertain what to do, began to evacuate. Without the gods' sustaining power, the astral Colosseum might drift apart, returning to cosmic dust. Kaida and her new allies hurried toward their small ships, docked at the Colosseum's edges, determined to escape before everything collapsed. As they reached the docking bay, Kaida paused, looking back at the shattered statues. She remembered the artifact's discovery in that ancient temple, the long journey that led here. It was not the first trial she had faced, and it would not be the last. The gods still lurked in distant corners of the universe. The artifact on her arm pulsed as if acknowledging that their struggle was far from over. They boarded Kaida's ship, the Last Hope, which trembled as its engines fired up. Arion's slender shuttle hovered nearby, as did Suthyra's graceful vessel, and Thrask's squat, heavily armored craft. Together, they would depart this place, forming a small fleet of allies. As they soared away, the Colosseum imploded behind them, scattering star stone into the nebula. Inside the cockpit of the Last Hope, Kaida slumped into the pilot's seat. She caught her reflection in a piece of polished metal. She was different from the bright-eyed explorer who had left her dying world. She had learned that true strength lay not in blind faith, intellectual pride, or brute force, but in cooperation, understanding, and the willingness to stand against tyranny, be it from gods or any other force in the cosmos. Her people awaited her return. She could not bring them a ready-made paradise. But she had something else, new allies, new knowledge, and the determination to continue searching. Humanity would find a home. Not given by gods, but chosen and earned by themselves. As the small fleet disappeared into the starlit void, a faint whisper echoed through the dimension rifts left behind by the battle. The gods were not done. They would regroup, watch, and plot. Their defeat today was a setback, not a final death. They had been challenged as never before, and now they hungered for vengeance or a second chance to reassert their power. But the champions had grown. They had unshackled themselves from old beliefs that no longer served them, forging a new path forward. This story had begun long before Kaida's arrival at the temple, and it would not end here. The cosmos stretched infinitely, filled with undiscovered worlds and lurking threats. The spark they had ignited this day would shape the fates of countless civilizations. Kaida set a course for a cluster of promising star systems Arion had suggested. Suthyra sent navigational data through encrypted signals. Thrask escorted them, his powerful ship on guard. Together, they sailed into unknown territory, ready to face whatever future awaited them.